Thank you everybody for coming here, and pleasure to be here at the third annual Global Big Data Conference. Thank you. And I would start with thanking all the three panelists. They're all very busy, either building companies or investing or partnering, so thank you for taking the time. And maybe we can start with a round of introductions first, and I'll start and then we'll move forward. I am Sanjeev Dang from Intel Capital. I'm an investment director there. I invest in several sectors, including big data and cloud computing and IoT. Intel Capital as an organization has been investing for over 25 years, and we have been pretty steady investors in several companies across multiple areas. At the end of the day, our goal is to bring value to Intel as a company, plus drive financial returns. We are among the largest VCs in the world in terms of dollars deployed. So we invest around 350 to 400 million every year. So not the fund size, but every year. And we are very stage agnostic. I have done deals as low as 250K, even pre-seed companies, and done deals pre-IPO level as well. Just closed a deal in DocuSign, which is a very late stage company. Volume. Can you guys hear me okay or not?
Yes, we're not amplified, but he's speaking in some way there. So.
Okay, all right. And I think we're lucky to have a panel mix. We have two venture capitalists and a big data entrepreneur. So my goal as part of the panel is also for you guys, for any budding entrepreneurs or CEOs, existing CEOs who look to be raising funding. My goal is also to maybe create some tension here between the CEO and the VC. So we'll see how that goes.
You should sit here. No.
I'm the neutral party here. I'm not the VC here. All right. So with that, I would ask my friend Kent to give the introduction, please.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me in here today. My name is Kent Langley. I am currently the CEO and CTO of a company called Echo. Echo is in the data analytics space, providing sort of data science as a service or data science platforms in two key areas. One is in marketing, MarTech and advertising, but the second and the newer division that we're working in is medical sensor data aggregation and analytics. So literally in the operating room theater, detecting critical bio signs and doing predictive analytics on the spot right then and there to try to keep people alive, which is pretty fun. So we've grown up over the last 3 years. Prior to this, I have been, my last company was called Nscaled, which was disaster recovery as a service in the cloud. Before that, I had a company that was doing primarily services for a variety of, think of it as chief technology advisory services for about a half a dozen to a dozen startups. So, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. I've talked to hundreds of VCs over the course of this and had all kinds of experiences. So I'm really looking forward to learning something new here today to give me ammunition for the next time I talk to a VC. So yeah, think about your questions. I look forward to trying to answer them as best I can.
Wonderful. Venk Shukla, please.
My name is Venk Shukla, and I run a small fund, which is an early stage fund that focuses on B2B enterprise space. And louder? Is that what you said? Should I say loud?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, they look at me and they say,
Oh, okay, all right.
but it wouldn't hurt. So.
Okay. Yeah, so early stage kind of a fund. See, we have invested in, I've invested in one big data company. I've invested in an IoT company, looking at 2 more IoT companies actually. And in my spare time also, I'm a volunteer. Actually, I'm volunteer in chief for an organization called TIE. I don't know if how many of you have heard of the organization called TIE. Those who have heard, can you please raise your hand? Okay, so some people have heard. Okay, so I'll just give a very quick introduction of TIE. It's a 22-year-old organization. It's a volunteer organization, and it exists to foster entrepreneurship, and it really has basically three principles behind its operation. One is that wealth creation is a noble activity, and second is that the best way to create wealth is through entrepreneurship. And the rest of the world also has started believing in these two principles. But the one that differentiates it from every other organization in the world is the third principle, which is the best way to foster entrepreneurship is for very successful people to give what is most valuable to them, which is their time, to make those who are aspiring to be successful. And that's a very, very hard thing to pull off for any volunteer organization. And TIE has done a phenomenal job of it. So we are about 22-year-old here in Silicon Valley, and we have about 60 branches all over the world. So we have actually two of those members here other than me, and this is Sanjeet is just joining, and Professor Akela is another one of those. So those are the two things that I do.
And
I work with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Venk is very humble in introducing himself, but we're privileged to have Venk here along with Kent and Benson. Venk is an invited speaker in all the top conferences, and the work he has done, particularly with taking TIE to that next level, has been phenomenal. So what a lot of the TIE is obviously an organization with multiple people attached to it, but Venk as the leader, he's the president of TIE Silicon Valley. Venk as a leader, he has really driven the vision and execution for TIE to the next level. Wonderful. Benson,
All right,
please.
so before I introduce myself, I vouch for TIECon. I've been there. I missed the last one because I was travel, but I've been there for the last several, and it's the most wonderful event anyone can pay money for, at least locally developed here. And I got a lot of good friends there, so it's definitely one of the best places to nurture entrepreneurship. And the event they put together is amazing. Food is good too, so that doesn't hurt. So I'm an entrepreneur turned VC, and working with a seed funding level VC firm called Diamond Tech. And my boss actually sitting here to keep me honest. Henry Wong, so a lot of people knows about him. So that's a quick introduction of myself and my firm.
Wonderful. So maybe we'll start with on the venture side. Venk, if you can talk about what areas you invest in. You briefly mentioned about that, big data and IoT. And if you can talk about a couple of companies, you alluded to them, but if you can tell us a little bit in more detail about why you chose those companies, what was exciting about them, and how you see them growing.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of discussion is here about IoT and big data being sort of going hand in hand, and that may be true for certain category of cases, but I don't believe that that's always the case. In fact, the real power of IoT lies in being able to. The transformational potential of IoT is when some devices senses something, somebody else takes an action on it in real time. And I think that's really where the transformational potential of IoT is. So I tend to be investing more on that side of the equation. So couple of things that you see I've invested in. One of them is a company called Sarvint, SARVINT. Wall Street Journal wrote about it in the context of Ralph Lauren's rollout of their smart shirt. And Sarvint, this company that I've invested in, sued Ralph Lauren, sued Victoria's Secret, sued Adidas, because all these guys are violating the patents that this one professor had. All the patents in this area are really owned by one professor whose smart shirt was in Smithsonian for 3 years. So, so the idea is that you collect the data, and appropriate data, I see, from appropriate places in your body, and you send it to a controller. The controller, from the controller, receives it to your phone, and then you do whatever you have to do. So that's one category. The second category really is on the smart city context, which is adjusting, you see how long the street lights are on, adjusting how the traffic lights sequence, adjusting how much you should charge for parking, adjusting, see, if you can, on the fly, if you can change, you see, one way to two way, those kind of adjustments. So, and now they're expanding into, waste management, which is, sensors you see in different places, and based on that, ability to route pickup trucks and stuff like that. So those are the 2 or 3 areas that, you see, I find interesting in IoT.
That's great. Benson, can you talk about maybe a couple of companies either you've invested in or you are looking at?
Sure. So I think just generally speaking, right, IoT, like Wayne's saying here, whatever the value it delivers, it better be, significant enough to, for us to invest in, and also for consumer to benefit from it. And if you have time, you Google, you put an IoT space toilet, okay? You will see a lot of IoT companies working on the solution for checking if your paper is running out, things like that. And and I would, and it's actionable, right? It's actionable. I would say not only needs to be actionable, it also need to deliver significant enough value for us to benefit from it. So just being able to turn the lamps on and off, I could have done that with my crap 20 years ago. And so we got to look at what value it delivers. And so some company that I know, one of them we invest in, is to monitor the traffic, and it can be a mall, things like that. And then based on that traffic pattern over time, you figure out how you can deploy your employee accordingly. That way you save your salary and then you provide better customer service. So you can essentially be more efficient and make more money as a result. And so things like that, it would cost, much better, it would create much better value to be catched than sort of monitoring if your paper is running out. So that's, my sense.
Great. That's very helpful to know. So if there are entrepreneurs in those sectors, you know who to go to. Maybe we'll step back and look at the market level. It almost feels like big data and IoT are becoming noisy markets. And a lot of the companies, at least big data companies that I meet, they all have a slide on here's my big data stack, and here is the analytics I do. It just feels like the font and the color has changed. But the pitch deck is so similar for especially the big data analytics companies. We will start with Kent. Are we really in a noisy market? Are we in a hype cycle when it comes to big data and IoT?
Well, I think there's no question that we are. I mean, Gartner just went so far as to drop big data from the Gartner hype cycle itself, which is the ultimate. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing from the cycle of hype.
I think Gartner has tried to understand big data for the past 4 or 5 years. They put it on the hype cycle. I still don't understand it. I just drop it.
But what I'm seeing, and it's very interesting what you guys just said, because what I'm seeing is I'll go in and I meet a lot of VCs. I really do, and I'm seeing a complete lack of hype aside, right? I mean, yes, it's overhyped, it's crazy, right? But there's this drive toward, think of them as first principles or fundamentals. And so when someone's telling you they can detect whether or not you're out of toilet paper or not, that's trivial and ridiculous, right? But if you want to do toilet IoT technology, then you need to partner with the biotech folks. You need to detect what's going through the toilet, and you can detect disease vectors. You can do all kinds of things. I mean, I deal with not toilets every day, but these types of ideas every day in my work at Singularity University. I teach there. I've taught over 1,000 students in the last year or so. And so
What do you teach?
I teach data science and exponential organization design.
Okay.
So, but the reason I mention it is because these same students and myself in my entrepreneurial ventures, we speak to VCs and they actually seem to want toilet paper detectors a lot of times, right? It's really
Because
shocking.
that's all that VCs can
Yeah.
understand, right?
And-
And we as VCs
You know?
we have to identify with it, right?
I know, and
Once
I'm
you
just
start
like-
talking about big data algorithms, we will go like, oh man.
Math, no.
Math, no way.
But you know, it's interesting. So to answer your question directly, absolutely, it's massively overhyped. Not all data that needs to be analyzed is big, sort of to a part of the point you may have been making there. A lot of it's actually very small, and it's the analysis that's important and the insight that's derived from that. So I think that as a term, it's always been a little weird. It's just data.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting, that would be my take on that. And I'm hoping to see more driving toward important problems being solved with data, big or otherwise.
Yeah.
But you know, it is, I mean, you talk about hype, you know, people come and say this is big data and or machine learning, or this is another latest buzzword. And you start grilling them, and it turns out all that they're doing is really some statistical analysis.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I said, so how do you train this thing? How do you think? Well, no, we're statistical. So why do you call it big data? Why do you call it machine learning?
Yeah.
Because fairness
So,
is-
so that's absolutely true, right? If you look at the foundation of the bulk of what people are calling machine learning and AI today, it's rooted in technologies that are 40 plus years old, deep statistical analytics techniques. And that's fantastic, but the sands have shifted. There's a lot of new stuff that's happening now in the deep learning space that is truly new, right? And so you can do dynamic model creation and application to streams of data in real time using technologies like neuromorphic chips, technologies like cognitive learning algorithms. And this is changing the landscape dramatically, but that's actually such a small percentage of what probably crosses your desk that it's almost to be just a little bit of a small sound over in the distance that you barely hear. But I do think we're about to see a whole new wave of we'll take them as data-driven or data-enabled applications based on these new technologies that are emerging. And these new techniques that, by the way, are still standing on the shoulders of the giants of the 40s and 50s. So we have to pay them homage, but we are finally starting to break those reins, I think. So I hope you guys are starting to see some of that.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
the point there is that there is some lot of fundamentally new stuff happening. There's a lot of that fundamentally happening, but you know, since as you said, it's hype. You see, 10-20% is stuff, and other 80% is repackaging. Repackaging of same thing is with big data and machine learning and stuff.
So how do you sift through all that and pick the right
Yeah.
things to invest in?
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to know. No.
So 20 years ago, when I was in college, big data is called decision-making systems, right? We call it decision-making systems. I think
That's right.
the reality is changing the game a little bit. So what's happening now is we got much, much bigger data. They come at us at a much, much faster speed. And we're having a hard time getting the information out. So and then you have to put a marketing term on top of all this, right? So big data is the best they can come up with, so we use it.
Yeah.
But really, fundamentally, we're not solving any different problem that we've been trying to solve all these years. And so we're continuously trying to find better way to solve the same problem, which is really decision making, right? Unless the data can help me be actionable, can also, you know, make a better decision, more intelligent decision. Data is just a raw data. They're useless.
But you know, in one sense, I mean, I think in one sense things are changing though is just the volume of data.
That's right.
And the second is the nature of data, right? I mean,
Okay.
you had this exadata and teradata stuff as you deal with huge amounts of structured data. But now you see with, if you have to analyze, you see videos and
Graphics.
images, you see, and, blogs and Facebook postings and Twitters. And then you see, combine that, you see, with, the structured data, and then be able to derive insight. Now, that's a new challenge.
Right.
I mean, just the scale of that thing is just enormous. And you see, the nature of the problem has changed.
Right.
So I think there is a genuine opportunity, you see, for people to solve those kind of problems.
Yeah. The like recurrent neural network training, for example, you can't do it without an enormous amount of data, right? You literally can't.
Right.
And those types of data sets have only recently become available to people to even do such things. And if you just look at ImageNet alone, that one's been around a little longer than most. And when you see about people discovering cats on YouTube and things like that, they're looking at those types of data sets. But the fact is that being able to do that not only against a large data set, but then take the model and apply it to a new stream of data, your ABC type division of them in your machine learning. Doing that in real time, that's brand new. Right? And I mean, I'm talking brand new, 18 months or less, in a commercial way, actually being able to do this. And so I'm extremely excited about this, actually, from a technology
Are you talking
perspective.
about data at scale but still real time?
Yes.
Is that what you're
Absolutely.
talking about?
Yeah. The advent of this wasn't really, I would say, available to the common man, right, until, say, roughly, as I was building some systems in 2010, 2011 that could do some of this, but it wasn't really until about 2012 that you could get stuff off the shelf, that you didn't have to custom build from scratch, that could do stream-based analytics on very fast, large volume streams of data, unstructured or structured, whatever you like. And so I'm also curious about what kinds of opportunities you guys are seeing out there, and are those types of things interesting to you? And there's technologies like Spark that have hit the world, Cassandra, things like Mesos and Yarn for resource management. These things all matter so much, but again, it's not all about giant data like terabytes or exabytes. Those problems are actually still pretty rare.
How can startups differentiate? Nowadays, every startup says I'm using Hadoop or I'm using Spark. Those are good open source technologies, and they can help you with real-time or big data analytics in general. But how can startups differentiate on top of that? Venk, maybe any thoughts first? And then
I'm not,
answer?
I may be in a minority here, but I'm not a believer in Hadoop or Spark for that matter. I think as a
But those are examples. In general,
yeah,
how do you...
as a solution to big data, that's not really a solution to big data, and that's why, till today, I'm not aware of any large-scale, enterprise-scale deployment based on Hadoop anywhere. And I think the problem may be, batch-oriented and all those. Whatever the problem is, then people build companies based on Hadoop, and then I shouldn't say that. You guys invest. You guys invest.
That's FYI, we are investors in Cloudera.
I was going to say, you mean Cloudera, Hortonworks, those types of companies, right?
Yeah. So then now, and it's clearly see, it has passed the hype cycle. Hadoop is clearly one thing that has passed the hype cycle, and now the latest savior is supposed to be Spark, which is like 10 times faster than this thing, and people are migrating to that. But even that doesn't cut it. And I think good entrepreneurs will get out of this with these kind of what is fashionable, and look at the problem and solve it in a very fundamentally different way, because the problems are real, and companies are are really at a limit. They're limit because somebody explained to me a long time ago that initially, technology was a competitive differentiator. If you were able to automate, your systems, you had a competitive advantage compared to the company that did not. You're more efficient and more productive. Now that everybody in the world has SAP and Oracles and ERPs and everything that you can think of, for CRMs and for supply chains and stuff. Now, where does the competitive differentiation come from? It comes from the use of big data for new insights, and big data problem is real. I mean, I was just talking to Clorox for lunch, and you wouldn't think that Clorox will have a big data problem. What kind of problem will you have? Their marketing department alone generates or receives about 3 terabytes of data a day. And throughout the organization, including all their factories and trucks and shipments and all those things, adds up to probably petabytes of data, which is like mind-boggling.
It all falls on the floor right now.
And the problem is very real today.
I had the exact same conversation 2 weeks ago with the top executives from the Coca-Cola company, and they were just, I thought this will be fun. I'll just play a little trick on them. I told them I was building data centers in trucks. And then I would back the truck up to their facility, and I would process their data for them on site. And they were like, "When can we have that?" I wasn't even serious. I was sort of just joking, but they actually, that's how desperate they are. Is my point, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that it's just Coca-Cola by any means, I have probably 6 encounters, I'll say, in the last 2 weeks with various companies with data coming in the range of hundreds of gigabytes to multi-terabytes of data every single day. They simply analyze about 100th of it or 1,000th of it, and they just throw their hands up, and they don't know what to do. So Spark is a tool, right? It does not give you insight to make good decisions. It is how you use it. There is some new technology that has come out of IBM called the Spark kernel that can sit on top of it, that you can tie interactive notebooks to, interactive code shells and things like that. That's changing that quite a lot and very, very quickly. But I actually agree with you, and I'm a technologist. I happen to love Spark, and I think it is way better. I have a slide, and one of my presentations is a really happy elephant and then a really sad elephant. That's my way of explaining that, right?
Explaining Spark,
yeah,
Spark on Hadoop.
to non-technical folks. But the idea that it's going to solve all your problems, and just saying I have Spark, it doesn't mean anything. It's actually quite hard to use if you don't know what you're doing. So
I think both Hadoop and Spark are really get invented out of desperation. We really don't have a good tool right now. So so I really think, Spark is only a year plus old. Hadoop only start gaining traction in the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
They've been around for almost 10 years now. And, we're begging for better tools. And so if I'm an entrepreneur, I'll come up with a way to create better tools for the enterprise to use. I don't know an enterprise today can handle all the data that they're getting.
Yeah.
Well, another tool that came out of Amp Labs, which is where Spark came from, was Mesos.
Yeah.
And Mesos then spawned a company called Mesosphere. Spark spawned a company called Databricks. But the Mesos thing's really interesting is because if you look at the Apple use case where they've ported Siri to a Mesos framework, that's what I call a cloud-native application or a distributed application, whatever you want to use, whatever terminology. That to me is really exciting because they don't need Spark. They're just using Mesos. And Mesos underneath the hood probably in their case would use HDFS for persistent storage, and the distributed computation is handled by a resource management framework. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is something we want to pay attention to, keep an eye on.
Yeah. Maybe we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about little bit more about IoT. Venk mentioned about connected shirts. Are we getting into a world where everything around us will be connected, and wherever we go to work, the desk is connected, we go to home, the bed is connected, I'm wearing a connected watch, I'm wearing a connected shirt, so my data is everywhere. So 2-part question. 1, are we entering that connected device world, connectivity everywhere? And number 2, if that happens, what happens to my data? My data is I don't even know who all will have access to that data, which companies, and then whatever they can do with it. So we'll start with maybe Benson.
You're implying privacy, right? You're implying this privacy issue here, and I think the privacy is gone and gone forever. If anybody expect to have any privacy, this is in denial.
Especially after the Facebook world, right?
That's right. And what was the recent one? What was that medicine? I forgot the site name. You guys know which one I'm talking about?
there's
Medicine, right?
Oh, yeah.
I never looked.
You never look? Oh, it's okay. I didn't know either. So, but in terms of privacy, I think it's a goner. It's really a goner. And for most honest people, I don't think that's a concern. People want to have your data, they would have it, one way or the other. So I'm not that worried about it. What really bothers me is still getting down to where's the value of all these connectivities and all these raw data. Unless it makes my life better, makes our society better, it's useless to me, right? So we really have to focus on what does it produce at the end of the day. It's all nice to have all these gadgets from everywhere, sensors everywhere, but what does it really produce? What does it make me healthier, eat better? And ultimately, I believe the answer is yes. But I think we're in a very, very early stage of getting there. And for it to work, it has to be pervasive enough. I don't need to know it's there. I really do not want to know I'm wearing a shirt that has IoT in there. I just want to put it on without knowing anything and benefit from it. So I don't think we're there yet. I think we're at the very beginning of getting there. I think when we get there, it's going to be wonderful. But we're getting there.
Yeah. You talked about data, right? I mean, amount of data that's available about you to marketeers is mind-boggling today. They know if you're not in the habit of deleting all the cookies on a daily basis from your computer,
Who does that? I've never done that.
Exactly.
Every day I go in and delete cookies. I have better things to do than Ken. I know that for sure.
I do it because I build systems that I give to those marketers, and I know what they know, and wow.
By the way,
right?
there's a trick, right? When you close your browser, there's a trick to delete everything, history,
Yeah.
cookies, and all. I set that up, so when I close my browser, all that's deleted.
Exactly.
Really? I need to learn that from you. So amount of information that exists, you see, that marketers sell to other companies is just mind-boggling. They know, you see, where you live. They know, you see, what are the things you have bought. You know, where you wanted to travel.
And you know, whenever I ask those companies, how can you do that? It's private data. The answer is we anonymize it. We
Yes.
don't give the name of the person.
Yes.
We're telling everything about the person without the name.
But there is a way.
By the way, that's not true.
But there is a way.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
But there is a way to connect that back to your name.
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's mind-boggling what already exists, you see, today, and that's why I see, companies are in business to do that. So that.
Why is it a problem?
I'm sorry.
Why is it a problem that marketers know that I prefer to receive advertisement about car than tanning salon or whatever? I think it's a value. I don't see that a problem.
Yeah, I think most of us voluntarily give information so that we can derive better service or more customized kind of attention. And most of us willingly do that. But in the process of doing that, we are sharing, essentially we are letting, a lot of strangers know about who we are, what we do and stuff. And sometimes people will take advantage of it. But if you can deal with it, sure. These days, we have a landline phone and we have a cell phones, right? 80% of the calls that I get on my landline phone are marketing calls.
Yeah.
Marketing calls, and these are the things that you never imagine that people would call you for, and I guess they must be using this data that they're buying from marketers to call us.
Yeah. And if these marketing companies are going to use our data as consumers, shouldn't we get a cut out of what they make? Shouldn't they? It's our data, right?
No, that's
To
a
start
startup
with.
idea.
It's our data. They take our data, analyze it, sell it to Coke, etc., and say, "Hey, Sanjeet likes Coke." Shouldn't the marketer be giving me benefit by using my data?
Well, there's one company in the UK that's attempting to do that. And,
Consumers make money out of your own data.
yeah.
But this is what
Sorry,
you guys do later.
Sorry, I don't know if you
I'm sorry,
wrapped up your thought.
there was a
Yeah.
question. I don't know, it was over here, someone.
I was just commenting,
Yeah.
should you get something, I said it can of course as well.
So,
As a comment, not a
Please.
question, if you are opening to questions.
yeah, please.
So what I'm hearing is that, I want to make 3 observations and get your response. So it seems that the action from everything Venk especially said has moved to the app analytic layer, right? In other words, you already have a domain, you have a problem to solve. And whatever analytics is required to make it work, with whatever data, you'll solve the problem. That's one observation. And the question is true or false. And I think your point was, well, everything seems to become, you're trying to make take a decision so as to be actionable. Being actionable means you do something. Okay, what's the decision analytics? And the third seems to me, there's a lot of data sparsity in all this so-called big data. For example, there are very few people who buy things despite zillions of ads being shown, impressions being shown. So a lot of data sparsity or data gaps. So I'm sort of curious, given these 3, just in terms of creating new companies, right? What might you see as worthwhile as opposed to cookie cutter boring, here's a Hadoop stack or a Spark, whatever stack in the big data stack. I mean, what's something more meaningful? What do you see? Give me a few examples.
Can't you understand?
Say healthcare. Pick healthcare because the VCs love it, a little living mentality, as Venk was pointing out, and 19% of GDP.
Yeah,
And give
sure.
me something saturated like the ad tech market where everybody claims is saturated, but people said about search before Google went IPO.
Yeah, so my company we have what we call a massive transformative purpose, okay? This is why I get up every day, and I go to work, and even if I'm building stuff that's not quite to its apex of awesomeness yet, I know where I'm headed, and it's to do good things with data for people, okay? And I think data can move the world if we use it right. And so one example of that is a project I just completed, where there are some details of it I can't tell you, but the gist of it is a new type of medical sensor that's put on you when you go into the operating room and you're put under general anesthesia. A lot of people die on the operating room table because they stop breathing and no one notices because they're essentially paralyzed because they're under general anesthesia. And you only have about 90 seconds before you have brain damage, and not long after that you're just dead. There's not much they can do. The state of the art here is chest straps, pulse oximeters. So if we use the pulse oximeter as an example, given that's what your hospital has, it won't typically register a large enough dip in your oxygen level in your blood for about 45 to 60 seconds. So now if I've got a new sensor that can detect your respiration at a much finer granularity, and I can apply an on-site predictive analytics algorithm that can predict when you're going to stop breathing based on anomaly detection patterns using deep learned algorithms, specifically cognitive learning algorithms in this particular case, from a company called Nupic. That's a big deal. And that's big data to me, because that's a big impact. You get up after that operation and you walk away, right? Even though you stop breathing, I can intubate you 60 seconds to 90 seconds sooner than I would have otherwise been able to. So that's an example that I think matters. I get chills every time I talk about it because I want to find 1,000 use cases like that. And that's the stuff I want to build, right? And I've built a lot of MarTech and AdTech, and I know it really well, and I know exactly what I know about all of you, right? But it's this is the stuff that matters, and this is where we need to be spending our money and our time.
But you know, the point that you made, that's on application side, I mean, there is a lot of work going on in application side, but I think there's a lot of work going on in the infrastructure side also for big data, because the shovels and picks and all those things are still being built. And there's a big opportunity there. You know, there's one company right outside displaying H2O, right? They provide all the underlying math engines as, you know, to build, you see, your own applications on top of it. I'm invested in that company, by the way. And then there's another company that I've invested in, which essentially is, you know, before you get to see anything on Tableau, there is months and months of data prep work. How do you cut that months and months of data prep work into minutes? And I think there's an opportunity there. Right. In fact, a number of companies you see are chasing that market because Tableau is, you know, has made it very appealing, and every executive in every company wants a Tableau interface, and so that they can do those things. But it's a lot of work, is it, to get from raw data, is it, to Tableau, and that's where a lot of opportunities are.
Well, the good news is that's one of the places Spark's really helping, because it's really fantastic at ETL upstream.
Did
So,
Spark
yeah.
send you a royalty?
No, not at all.
Okay, just
Not at
checking.
all.
Just wanted to make sure.
No, I haven't. I
So
don't have any
Berkeley
commercial.
AmpLab might
Yeah.
send.
I have no commercial relationship
All right,
with
thank you for
either
disclosing.
Berkeley
Yeah.
or
Just one
Databricks.
clarification from Ken. For Professor's question on the big data, you talked about oxygen sensing, and that's individual data, the way I heard it, not big data. Please clarify to me what the big data context is when you are putting whatever sensors on an individual in the operation.
Sure. So two pieces to that answer. Big data is big when it has a big impact, and it has a big impact when it is when the insights that you derive can drive good decisions, right? So if you want to be very strict, though,
Is that the definition of big data?
it's my definition.
When it
of
has a
big
big
data.
impact.
That's the one I care about.
That's
Okay.
Ken.
Right, so
Ken-
that's Ken Langley's definition.
Let's ask the
So,
professor if he
no.
agrees with that definition
Now,
of big data.
if you want to go more classical definition, right, then you're going to stick with
Nobody
volume, velocity, variety, and veracity, right? In which case, the use case I just gave you is not a big data use case. Yeah, but I am sampling at a certain megahertz, and it is quite a lot of data to analyze in real time in a disconnected state without a cloud computing data center.
In the classical sense, it is because you are taking this data and then you're deriving information from a wealth of data, big data that you have in the back end, to arrive at a decision to help that particular person. So there is a lot of big data in the back end. Yes, this is personal data, but you're arriving at the analytics based on big data.
That's right. Yeah.
That cannot be applicable because big data for everyone else doesn't apply to you at that point.
Well, and
That's my point.
well, that's a good point, and that's where the,
Yeah.
the deep learning and dynamic model building comes in. So it's really important.
That's okay.
So maybe we switch gears a little bit and talk at a generic level about VCs and how they view companies. There are probably quite a few people in the audience who have pitched or are looking to pitch to VCs. So my first question is, we'll start with Benson. Why do VCs reject 99% of the pitches they see?
Because they don't have enough money.
Good, honest answer.
So that was one of my answers, but the real answer is, most entrepreneurs, they're engineers. And having a good technical solution doesn't equate to business, profitable business. And I want to follow up because I have a dying thing I want to share with the audience and especially you. And this can come back to that is, what is the good startup idea in general, right? There's a lot of startup ideas. To me, it has to actionable, solve a big problem. And one area in big data that I don't have a solution today is, if you look at all the recent hacks, right? Sony, Target, they all cost billions and millions of dollars. And the most recent one, the medicine website, someone get fired as a result of it. And those are actually big data related problems that we have not solved yet, right? We have all the signatures, we have all the raw data about those hacks while it's happening. But we don't have enough intelligence to actually come up with an alert, see the signal, and make an actionable decision on those hacks. And that's easily $1 billion business right there. And in fact, NSA may come and talk to you before you go IPO. So you don't never have to go IPO and have a big fat check for the rest of your life. But those are real world problems I like to see startup bring to me and to invest in. I don't want to see sensor in toilet paper hangers and stuff like that. They solve small problems, but not big enough. So really what we really need is look for high value, big impact. We should focus on those problems to solve with the big data.
Venk, your thoughts, please.
Why do they reject 90% of the funding requests that come to them? I think money is certainly a component, see how much money you have. But I think this thing is that every fund has its own sort of a bias and its own domain kind of expertise. And if it strays too far from that, people just don't have a way to judge how good or bad something is. And sometimes it takes a lot of getting educated to realize the full value of that enough to get excited about it. And
Domain expertise.
yeah, so this one conversation I had with the VC when I was on the other side, so went to a VC and he refused. And I said, this is something which is, you're likely to make money. I believe so, and my track record tells you that if I'm doing it, chances are that if I'm spending my money and time on this thing, hopefully you see that's a good indication to you. And the point that he made, which really was very interesting point, was that look, this is before we invest in anything, we have to develop enough conviction that we can go in front of the partners and we can, and others who have not spent as much time, so they will be very skeptical and they'll ask a lot of questions. So someone here has to spend enough time with the company to develop conviction that this is indeed the case, it's a good case, so you do this. Now, what's the value of a partner spending time and developing conviction if this is the only company in that sector that they're going to fund, or they're not likely to fund that thing anymore? So why develop expertise? Why spend effort to develop conviction in that? And that seems like a very reasonable kind of an answer to me. That if it's so far off from your core area of expertise, then even if the entrepreneur is good, you see, and good track record and stuff, they just don't have the bandwidth to, to invest that energy, to get educated enough to feel that, yeah, this is it. I'm
So
going to defend it.
VCs have a focus area where they have domain expertise, so they need to stay loyal to that.
And the more you see, more companies that you see in a particular area, the pattern matching kind of starts to take over. And you say, oh, I've seen enough of this big data and security kind of a thing, and they're all trying to attack, this thing, what, Netscope is doing, what Sky High is doing, what Elastica is doing, so that already saturated space is here. Maybe you have some slightly better technology, but heck,
But if they do pattern matching, don't they miss the next Google or the Uber?
Well, yeah.
I won't give a name. Somebody who was an investor in Google, I was talking to him recently, and he said, I missed Uber. He said, I was the first guy who Uber approached as for investment, and their first idea was, we'll buy whatever X number of black cars in the valley and roam around and make sure everybody gets the car when they need. And I told them, that's stupid. And this is an investor in Google. And he said, I told them, this will never work. In 6 months, you will come back to me and say, company is dead, I have the cars. I was like, I don't want the car. So I said no to Uber. So talk of pattern matching.
When you're the entrepreneur and you're pitching and you're doing that, say someone does invest enough time with you to really get to know you, get to know your company, your idea, the space. There's a next step sometimes with some of the larger firms that you want to be wary of. It's the consensus, the dreaded consensus. 9 out of 10 people of the partners can love you, and you can still not get the investment because one of them just didn't even take a second. They're like, no, I don't want to invest in that. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about your company. But that literally, I've been killed in pitches where I got 90% of the way there, and I've always found that a very interesting thing. And some firms do it that way. Other firms, it's just 3 out of 10 or whatever. But it pays to ask early on in the process, how do you make a decision about the investment? And I think that's a good question.
A lot of entrepreneurs think that VCs have a magical spreadsheet in which they plug in some numbers, and when the spreadsheet gives out an output, they decide, yes or no, I got the answer. Do you have a spreadsheet?
I have one, but not for that purpose. There's a science and art. And I think the art part is the tough part. I think we all use more or less the science part, but the same. The art part is the hard part, and it's emotional involvement. There's domain expertise. There's also, if you're good VC, you want to skip some of the pattern matching, right? How do you, besides Google, say YouTube? Early days of YouTube, so I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to build this website that would, to share some pirated videos, and what kind of business model is that, right? But so if you try to match a pattern, you would never invest in YouTube. You would probably not invest in, Pinterest or things like that, because clearly there's a lack of business model, and it's a field that's sort of risky. So sometimes there's an emotional decision you have to make. Do I take this chance? Do I take this chance, or do I stay with my pattern? Pattern tells me no, but sometimes you may want to say yes to some of those opportunities. So that is the art part of the investment that's harder to master. And I think it helps that if you're in the industry long enough, you see enough mistakes, and you know some founders, and learn more from each other. That helps the art part of the investment, which is harder much harder to master.
Got it. So maybe with that, we'll open up for questions, please.
Let him go first.
Sure.
So, I have a question regarding the economic crisis. Like, what impact do you foresee on the IoT in terms of the big data and on the venture capital?
Yeah, maybe Venk can start.
I think the venture capital cycle, is not directly correlated, say, with the gyrations in stock market. So people take it in stride unless it's a massive correction, and it changes the psychology of the entire of the all the customers. I mean, VC cycle is somewhat immune to those kind of cycles. So I don't think there'll be much of a difference. But ask me again, is if this drop continues for next 2 weeks, and maybe we'll have another conversation.
Please.
A bit of an odd question, so you're given the interesting nature. Part of the issue seems to me going to the domain competency, right? So if I think of VCs, and you'll correct me if I'm mistaken, many people in so-called analytics and big data actually come from infrastructure backgrounds, because typically, right, somebody who's successful in his company, made a ton of money, or did pretty well, comes to become a VC. But their background is really this infrastructure. So I think that as far as I can make out, there are not that many people who invest in analytics who actually have an analytics background. That seems to be, at least I have a lot of friends, as you might imagine, not only type but other VCs, right? So they keep asking me for help. So the question is, how do you communicate with somebody who doesn't really know the area? It's a bit like this. You have an infrastructure, okay, you have a 10x speed up or a scale up, or you have a 100x, you have a sense for what it all means, right? But with analytics, maybe it's only 10 or 20%, but maybe it means a ton of money. That thing you may not have intuitively have not worked with it, but of course VCs pick it up because they're in the business, and as they look at things, they get it. But I guess the question, how do you communicate when they're not familiar with something seems to this issue in the analytics space? And I'm curious about your experiences and thoughts and how to address it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start, and I'll let others chime in as well. If a VC is not an expert in your domain, it is easier to start with, here is the high level technology stack, but not go too deep into it, and then switch very quickly to use case and the customer, because that will resonate more with the VC. Getting deeper into the stack, you might lose him or her in the first 15-20 minutes of the conversation. You don't want to do that as a pitch. So getting quickly to, here is how the world operates today, and here is how the world will operate if my company is successful, and here is the impact that I'm bringing in this particular use case. Talk about customers. Talk about, I won't give the name of a company, but I talked to a company that sells as a big data infrastructure to all the Uber type companies. So not just Uber, but Uber type companies. So very quickly they were able to articulate all the real-time mobile app, that the messaging that goes on between the customer and the driver happens on my infrastructure. Now that's a compelling use case, right? So those are kinds of things that will resonate. So that's what I would say.
If you look at every time there are some VCs that focus on all the areas, and then there are some niche VCs. And the niche VCs are experts in that, deep domain experts in that area. But the way general purpose VCs make decisions is they rely on experts like you to educate them, and more important is to get instinctive feel from people like you that, are you excited about this technology? Is this something that's fundamentally transformative? And if they get the same kind of feedback from 3-4 different people, then I think even if you don't know anything about this area, I think it's easy to make a decision. If you know four people like you, and all 4 of them are saying, wow, this is something huge, or I don't understand the business impact of it, but it's a fundamentally a different way of doing it. It's very risky, but if it works, this could be this. Then now it is reduced into traditional risk is benefit kind of analysis, and you really don't need to know domain at that stage. And so the best the funds you see are general purpose funds. I mean, they're not the niche deep domain expert funds.
Most VC are actually not that technical, even though they are domain expertise maybe in X area, they're not really deep enough. So, I would just focus on value. If you have a paid customer already, that's particular. If you can say here are X, Y, Z customers already paying me, that would be very powerful.
Please.
I'm referring to the problem that you raised, the apnea detector that you talked about in the operating room. Right? that problem has a definite emotional component. You know, there was
Sure.
already a dissonance here in the room about whether it's big data or not, or it has a big consequence or not. How do you know instinctively to shy away from a problem like that? Because the problem that you describe, it requires changing the system. Who's being penalized for a patient dying in the hospital?
Yeah, no, there's real issues there because we'll also have a record of everything, saved in the database, and so it's not he said, she said anymore. It's just facts. So we know exactly when somebody did what, and it's. You're getting into the softer side of it, right? Whether it's big data or not. I'm not sure.
Big data or not.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is it requires a definite consequence for somebody that it is a malpractice case.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
That's right.
are there very many cases like really sick patient going to a lung transplant, for example, dies because the patient was already sick? Nobody is going to be suing. Unless it's a really obvious one. Meaning what I'm talking about is a very, very niche case of a product there. How do you shy away from something like that? I mean, I'm not necessarily citing the problem.
How do I shy away from it? I'm not sure.
Meaning, how do you not just focus on a problem like that? Meaning it has a definite problem of a niche with a very reduced ROI.
Well, the description I gave you is just one tiny part of the overall productization path for that particular use case. So it's just the most powerful part to tell as a story in front of a crowd. So it's nice. But the reality is that there are many more applications for that particular technology that don't require that particularly high litigation risk situation. But I suspect in this case, patient's going to sign a waiver, and I would to have that sensor on. I would waive my rights, and I think it'll be a little bit like that.
All right. Any other questions? Maybe we have room for one more question. All right. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the three speakers.